Hello. I figured it was about time for another installment of Olivia's Crazy Life, aka the train wreck you can't look away from. And I'm sure the title of this video has you thinking, oh wow, why did I hit play? And I think there's something to be said there about guilty pleasures, and we're just gonna let it go. So let's just dive into it, shall we? The coma. The coma of 2022. So, the beginning of this year, I was doing quite well. I had recovered from my weird emergency surgery on Christmas, and I had come down to Florida again the end of January, and I was doing like a sober living IOP situation. I was 6 months sober. I'd never been that sober before. You know, like angels were singing, there were rainbows. Fantastic. Now, little backstory. For those of you who don't know, I am epileptic, and it's a nightmare. But I was doing well with that too. Like, I was healthy? No, that's a stretch. But I was okay. And so, doing my thing. And then on February 5th, which was a Saturday, I was sitting in IOP, just, there. And the next thing I know, it is 11 days later, and I am waking up from a medically induced coma. Yeah, I'm not sure how point A led to point B. But that's not the story we're really diving into here. See, apparently I started seizing that morning, and the EMTs or the doctors in the ER could not stop it. So at that point, they were like, all right, coma time, and there you go. Now, if you were to ask me in the immediate aftermath of waking up, like, hey, do you dream when you're in a coma? I would have been like, nah. It's kind of like general anesthesia, where you're there one moment, and then you're not, and then you are again. And that's a coma. But as time passed in the good old neurocritical care unit of Holy Cross Hospital, I would soon realize I had a solid 2 weeks of memories that could not be verified by anyone. I don't know where to start with that one. But essentially, I had all these memories of being in a treatment center, where the treatment center was, the people I met there, the doctors I had, conversations I had, just general events and locations and all that crap. And eventually people would slowly but surely start to tell me no, you were here during that time, comatose. And that was very hard for me. So what I didn't realize at the time was I was very delusional, like paranoid delusions. And it triggered just some very unfortunate events. For instance, when I first woke up from this coma, I was very convinced that my mother was dead. And she wasn't, but you couldn't tell me that. I mean, to my core, in my bones, I felt the loss of my mother. I thought it was just a fact my mother had died. And it wasn't only just this notion I had memories attached to it. I remember her funeral. I remember going home to New York, and the newspaper, the journal news, was on my kitchen table, open to her obituary. And I remember thinking, of course there's no tablecloth on this kitchen table. My mom's not around anymore to do that kind of thing. And I remember seeing my sisters for the first time in years. Well, that we were all together at the same time for the first time in years, you know, because we had all gathered for our mother's funeral. It was just black and white. Like, that was the fact. That's what I really thought. And for a while there, I was only calling my dad, which actually I think may have not been true, just because I later had memories of not being able to operate a phone during this time. But I thought that, like, my dad was the only parent I had left, so he was the only one to talk to. And it became so overwhelming, that grief, that a couple days after coming out of coma number 1, because there was 2, I started refusing my seizure meds, because my mindset was, if I'm in a coma, I don't have to grieve my mother. And at this point, my neurologist started getting very desperate. He would call my mother and hand me the phone and be like, hey, here's your mother on the phone in her live form. And it made no difference. I would get on the phone, I would hear her voice, and I would break down even more, because I'd be like, this is obviously a recording. You are being manipulative and cruel by making me listen to this, because my mother is dead. And it's not funny. It was really traumatizing. So yeah, I started refusing my seizure meds, which is when coma number 2 came about. And this one was only like 2 days, I think, because they knew at this point, you know, there wasn't necessarily something very neurologically wrong with me. It was just this stupid idiot isn't taking her meds. So I, you know, came out of coma number 2, and I just kind of got over Mother Dearest being dead. And eventually, maybe like a week or 2 later, once I was transferred out of the CCU, I had called my dad. I'm like, what you doing? And he's like, I'm at lunch with your mom. I'm like, Mom's alive? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. And there was no like clouds parting, giant relief that my mother was alive. I was just like, yeah, okay. Because I had so much else going on up here. It was a mess. And things that seemed very normal at the time were delusions. Like, I thought that my neurologist was also a part-time weatherman, and the nurses made me watch him on the news every night to support his career as a weatherman. Just like, it alternated between little things like that and, you know, dead mom. And then there was the paranoia as well, right? So when I woke up from these comas, there was a lot of neurological and physical deficits, okay? I didn't just wake up in the same physical state that I'd went into the coma in. I temporarily lost use of my legs and my left arm. I had no strength. And I also couldn't talk, because when I was intubated during these comas, they accidentally paralyzed my right larynx, and I sounded like a cowboy with COPD, and that's putting it nicely. Like, I couldn't be understood by anyone. But anyway, so I really didn't have the use of my body, but both in the CCU and then even when I was transferred to a lesser level of care in the hospital, I would just be overcome by this panicked feeling that I need to get up and I need to leave this room. Like, terror. Like, I didn't know exactly what I was afraid of, but in my head, if I didn't get out of the bed and leave the room immediately, something awful was gonna happen, probably fatal. But again, couldn't so much as lift myself. So with my one good arm and what little core strength I have, which is none, I would, with so much effort I can't even describe it, and over a long period of time, fling myself over the bed rail and then just be a piled like ball of mush on the floor. And by the time I hit the floor, I've now forgotten what I was doing. I'm just on the floor now. And so I was eventually put under like a quasi-Baker Act, which to my non-Floridians is just being deemed mentally unstable, which is when they had a psych tech come and sit in my room with me 24/7. It's a very fancy way of saying I now had a babysitter, because they couldn't have me, flinging myself around the room, because I was connected to a whole bunch of things. It was just a very dire time. And, at this point I'm starting to meet with a psychiatrist regularly, and just in like our casual talks, he's starting to try and tell me that a lot of the things I'm talking about aren't real. And so now I'm like 2 deeps into this post-coma life. I'm still in the hospital. I don't have a lot of communication with my family because, they're in New York and my voice is very screwed up, so I can't even talk to them on the phone. And again, because of these neurological deficits, I couldn't really text because I didn't have the dexterity in my fingers to hit the small buttons. Like I had to learn how to be a human again, how to, work my fingers and my legs and my voice, and I had no real grip on reality. And so I eventually slipped into psychosis. And that came from a combination of a couple of things. So it's what I already mentioned, the fact that I did not know what was real, what was a delusion, what was possibly a dream. I didn't know. It's like, okay, someone comes up to you and says, hey, you remember yesterday? And you're like, yeah, I remember yesterday. It was yesterday. I was there. And then they're like, man, I hate to be the one to break it to you, but yesterday didn't happen. And you're like, the fuck it didn't. I could tell you who I talked to and what I ate yesterday and et cetera, et cetera. But this person's like, no, I'm sorry, yesterday didn't happen. And now other people are coming up and agreeing with this guy and are like, yeah, sorry, yesterday didn't happen. Like we are going to confirm that for you. We're with this guy, yesterday didn't happen. It's all in your head. And not only is that scary, but it's infuriating and frustrating. Like, how dare you tell me that didn't happen? I'm telling you it happened. So I was all over the place. I didn't know who to trust, what parts of my day were real and what weren't. I sat in a hospital for weeks, and still to this day, this was in February, still to this day, I don't know which of my memories from that time are real and what aren't. For instance, I had this memory that I got into some legal trouble. This is gonna sound so ridiculous, but please keep in mind, to me, it was insanely real. That apparently they found like my DNA on a shipwreck off the coast of Florida. And I don't know, I got hit with like trespassing and, damaging historical ruins. Okay, yes, sounds ridiculous, but I could tell you what my lawyer was wearing the morning we were supposed to go to court, what stories were being featured on the morning news the morning we were supposed to go to court, and the conversation I had with my father on the phone the day we were supposed to go to court. I could tell you what color my freaking lawyer's tie was. And I think I already said that. Did I already say that? Whatever. It was very real to me. And, I brought it up to my parents like maybe 2 months later, and they just laughed. They're like, huh, isn't that crazy that you thought that happened? And yeah, in retrospect, it does seem a little funny, but when other people joke about it, it still feels like a slap in the face, because it's basically saying, wow, you were so dumb that you don't know complete fiction from reality. And it was traumatizing. So I don't know. But anyway, so I slipped into psychosis towards the end of February because, again, delusions, weird memories, not knowing up from down, and the fact that during this entire hospitalization, I was not given any of my psych meds. For those of you who have the pleasure of not being aware, I do have some significant mental health issues, and I take quite an array of psych meds, including some pretty potent antipsychotics that keep me level and functioning, and they're good for me. But I was suddenly off of them for weeks. So I slipped into psychosis after a lot of physical therapy and being put on barbiturates, which is a problem later on in the story, but whatever. I was seizure free and I could kind of walk with a walker-ish, so there was no reason to keep me in the hospital at that point. So I was released and I was sent back to a treatment center's residential, and as soon as they got there, they looked at my hospital discharge paperwork and they're like, you can't be on barbiturates here. This is a substance abuse facility. So they tried to detox me off these barbiturates, and because of the epilepsy and the sudden detox, I had a seizure. And so they were like, holy shit, you are a medical handful. You cannot come back to this facility. So I left that facility. I wound up in a motel. Keep in mind, I still have a lot of neurological deficits. I cannot take care of myself. Over the next 2 days, I didn't eat anything because I could not cognitively figure out how to work Uber Eats. And this is something I've lived off of for years, but I suddenly couldn't work the app. Like, I didn't have the thinking power to understand what I was doing when I was trying to order a fucking pizza. And also my legs were still really weak and my equilibrium was off, so I kept like falling and then not having the strength in my legs to get myself back up. I mean, I spent days essentially as like a turtle on their back, not being able to roll back over. It was sad, it was pathetic, and I was in psychosis, so I was in a really dangerous state of mind and state of being. And of course, the thing with psychosis is when you're in it, you don't know you're in it. That's psychosis. So I didn't realize the danger I was in. And so I'm in this motel and I can't really see into the future, but I know somewhere in the back of my mind I'm fucked. I'm about to run out of money. I'm homeless. And I have no idea what the next step is. And also I'm very hungry. I don't understand how to feed myself. And I'm in Florida. My family's in New York. None of my friends down here knew that I was in a coma and am now in this situation. Because again, I couldn't work my phone when I woke up, and I didn't even have the ability to connect the thoughts in my head that were telling me, reach out for help right now, reach out for support, etc., etc. Like, I was in the hospital for weeks and no one knew other than my parents, and again, they were in New York. So, in this hotel room, at the very end of February, I decided, well, plan B has always been kill yourself. Do that. And this is where I'm going to do some serious trigger warnings because I'm about to talk about that, because that is ultimately what I tried to do. At this point, what am I, 7 months sober? Still sober, and I decided to end my life. And so, I don't know, have I mentioned that I have a lot of neurological deficits? Like, I couldn't even, like, hold and grip a razor blade. So, I walked to Walmart, and I'm not sure how long that took me. It could have theoretically took me hours. I don't even know how I found it. But I ended up getting a pair of wire cutters. Okay, I'm not going to be graphic, whatever. So, eventually, I do try to kill myself. And as I am bleeding, I think I want to call my little sister. I haven't spoken to her in over 2 years, and I want to hear her voice one more time. And that's ultimately what saved my life, not because I was able to reach my sister, because I couldn't couldn't operate my contacts app, so I couldn't find her number. I knew the numbers that consisted of her phone number, but I couldn't think clear enough to put them in the right order. So I've thought, you know, when I'm in hospitals and I don't have my cell phone and I need to call long distance, I dial 0 for the operator and they make the call for me and then patch me through. So I was like, I just gotta call the operator, man. Like, cause again, really just kind of dead up here. Just gotta call the operator. But I'm in a motel. There's no fucking operator. I'm on my cell phone. And so in my head, 0 for operator, that is a short number. And I guess also somewhere in my head, I thought, you know what else is a short number? 911. So I ultimately called 911 on myself as the mattress below me is becoming saturated with my own blood. And this I don't really remember. It was told to me later on by the hospital who got the report from, you know, the first responders and the dispatchers. I basically called 911 and told them, I'm killing myself. Can you call my little sister? Like, I called them to ask them to connect me with my little sister. Which was a bit of a red flag. So they tracked my phone and they came and found me. And I rolled into Hollywood Memorial Hospital, trauma level 1, tourniquets on both arms. And I'm like, wait, what? You know, like I'm still fucked up in the head, not even substance related. I'm just mentally impaired. And so I'm committed, obviously, once I'm all stitched up, off to the psych ward. And I was there for 2 weeks. And for those of you who are not familiar with being committed, that's a long ass time. And during this time, I'm starting to ease out of psychosis. I'm starting to regain the ability to look back and be like, whoa, that's craziness. Like, everything I just went through is insane. And pieces of it were definitely not real, but this piece and that piece maybe could have been real, still really fuzzy. I also regained my ability to walk in a straight line. I was getting a little bit of my voice back, enough to be able to call my parents, be like, yo, I failed to kill myself again. Oh, really bad at that. And they're like, you're not funny. I'm like, fair enough. But now, working with psychiatrists, those 2 weeks were able to pinpoint, okay, I was in psychosis. Through my existing mental health issues, I developed delusional paranoia, which is its own disorder. And I need to work on getting my brain back, sorting through my memories, processing them, and being able to move on. So after this long Baker Hecht, I went to a mental health residential where I kind of processed how I went from sitting in IOP to a coma to delusional paranoia to psychosis to a suicide attempt, etc., etc. And so basically what I'm trying to say is, do you dream in comas? You may, because there's just no way my imagination created all the memories that I had. I literally have a specific memory of getting into a bit of a tiff with a fellow patient at this treatment center I was at. I could tell you what it was over because he had a twin brother, and it was about his twin brother's legal issues that I accidentally snitched on him about. Like, it was so intricate, so detailed. I couldn't have made that up on the fly. Like, so maybe you do dream in comas, man. Or maybe I'm just so mentally ill that my brain just goes there. But now I am off of the barbiturates, thank God. Very dangerous situation for someone who has a substance abuse issue. I did find a, so far so good, combination of seizure meds. And today I'm sober and I'm stable and I'm working and things are okay. I feel like there was a lot more here that I wanted to say and just didn't get around to. But if you have any questions about Comas, I was in 2 of them this year. So let me know what you want to know. And I will come back and be open and way too revealing, such as I do. And life is crazy, man. And one thing after the other will just knock you the hell down. But for some reason, you know, I was just gonna say I keep getting up, but I did try to kill myself. So, hey, lived. So, I don't know, man. Today I'm grateful. I'm grateful for opportunities, for my next steps, and for being committed. Not for being committed. Let me rephrase that. For being motivated to execute my goals and my dreams and to be a functioning member of society. I have great friends today. I have great support. Yeah. So, thank you for coming to whatever the fuck this was. Oh wow, I need a cigarette. All right, thanks guys.